We still do have one other marquee game of the weekend, and it's the game of the year potentially. And we're talking Georgia at Alabama. Alabama is a 4-point favorite, over under 56. Look, this game is awesome, and there's no shortage of storylines around it. It's going to have potentially national title implications, college football playoff implications, et cetera, et cetera. Alabama's won 5 straight in the series. Last time they played came back in 2018 when Alabama won the national championship and SEC championship by a combined 10 points, both in comeback fashion. One of the stats you'll hear maybe a million times is Nick Saban is 21-0 head-to-head against his former assistants. But, I mean, I hate that stat in many ways because most of the time Alabama is supremely more talented than the team that they're facing, where Saban's assistants have gone to coach. And he said as much this week. He said, yeah, well, a lot of times my assistants leave and they go to programs that don't have as much talent as Alabama. This is the first time, if you look at 247 Sports Talent Composite, which looks at the composite rankings of all of the recruits on the team, this is the first time Saban has ever faced maybe any opponent, but one of his assistants where the other team is more talented on paper across the board. And it's 1 versus 2, by the way. Georgia's 1, Alabama's 2. And it's fractions and it's including, non-starters and all the recruiting classes that are coming in. The point is that it's a fair fight now, just like it was in 2018 when Georgia could have won either of those games, and they can win this game. Looks like Stetson Bennett is going to be the quarterback once again under center. He's done his job so far this year. I'm still not sold on him being a national title quarterback, but maybe I'm wrong. Georgia defense, probably the best defense in the nation. Alabama offense, arguably the best offense in the nation. You look at most stats, it's going to be Alabama's number 1 in college football on offense and Georgia's number 1 on defense. Strength on that side of the ball. The other side of the ball, Georgia's offense, it's doing okay. It's not one of the best offenses in the country. It's good offensive line. They have some weapons on the outside. You have Bennett, who's, not making mistakes and making the plays that he needs to. And then the Alabama defense, this is the big question. Look, I know Ole Miss is going to put it on a lot of teams this year, but I went back and watched that game. I wasn't able to watch most of it, and there were some troubling signs for Alabama. Guys out of position. The coverage was off. They were kind of getting pushed around a little bit up front. So I don't know. Maybe this Alabama defense isn't what I thought it was going to be this year. Maybe they'll get there. But I think that there's some holes on this Alabama defense. I think Georgia will be able to move the ball. And as great as I think this Georgia defense is, the Alabama offense, I just don't know how you stop it. And Mac Jones is playing at such a high level. They have NFL receivers, NFL running back, NFL offensive line. So, and Georgia's not a havoc-creating machine. So I think Mac Jones is going to have time to throw, and you can't cover those receivers. So initially I was looking at this game, and I was leaning towards the under just on how I thought it would play out. Now I'm thinking over. I don't think that Georgia is going to have trouble moving the ball, and I don't think anyone can really stop this Alabama offense. So I'm starting to look at these over 56, which is intriguing to me. And then one of the biggest wild cards here is Nick Saban. He has COVID. As soon as it was announced, the line dropped from 6.5 down to 4.5. So I'll start there with you. And we don't know if there's going to be more Alabama COVID cases that come out or not. We shall see. So I'll start there with you. What do you think the Saban news means to the game and to the spread? And then what are your thoughts on the matchup?
Well, I'm not surprised by the line move whatsoever because you and I were podcasting back when Urban Meyer was suspended for 3 games, and it took, a 2-point move on the week 1 game, and then all of his futures on the board, the game of the years, all took a 2-point dive. So I'm not surprised.
It's what we said. Was worth about 2 points of the spread.
Right. He's worth about 2.5 points to the spread. But, I'm going to take a different angle at this. And if you want to read more into it and you want to look at some advanced stats and some graphics, I encourage you to look at the write-up that I'll have on Action Network tomorrow. But let's talk about Saban's real value to game day, right? Because what you're going to hear on competitor podcasts is, this team's pretty good with the offense and this team's pretty good on the defense. I just don't know what's going to happen. It's just nobody's really diving into the real issue with Alabama. So let's break it down. For the first time in years, they have stability at the coordinators, right? Steve Sarkisian's been there. He was there in 2016 as an analyst for a little bit, came back as the offensive coordinator last year. Pete Golding is the defensive coordinator. He was a huge rising star at UTSA. UTSA was known for their havoc while he was there. Saban went and scooped him up. He was an assistant. After the whole Tosh Lapoy years where Saban essentially had to take over play calling and take over the defense once again, Pete Golding was promoted up to defensive coordinator. So you have to ask yourself, which side of the ball is going to suffer from Nick Saban being there? Not being there, unless they hang him over Bryant Denny like Chris Jericho in a WWE wrestling match where they put him in a cage, Anyways, that's just me and my wrestling phantom. But no, who does it affect the most? I don't think it affects Steve Sarkisian whatsoever. Look at this Bama offense over the years. It doesn't matter if it's been Lane. It doesn't matter if it's been Sark. We've gone from Jalen Hurts to Tua Tagovailoa to Mac Jones, and there's been zero drop-off in this offense. Mac Jones is running this offense perfectly. I saw somebody state out, Bama only has 7 passes over 20 yards. Are you kidding me? Those 7 passes that have gone for over 20 yards have totaled 366 yards. Mac Jones is running this offense as well as the household names that you know. I don't think Saban not being there affects this offense whatsoever. I think there's zero drop-off. The point spread should not, be moving because of that. Now, flip side, Pete Golding, yeah, that's a problem. Pete Golding came under fire last year, because their rushing success rate for the Crimson Tide completely, fell down outside the top 20. They were allowing explosive runs. We blamed it all on injury. We blamed it all on Dylan Moses not being there. Dylan Moses, captain of the defense, calls the plays, lines up at linebacker, gets everybody into position. So the big criticism of Alabama last year in the defense was that players were not lined up correctly. We have too many injuries. And then we had a couple players go into the NFL draft and made comment about Pete Golding back in April or May and said that the communication was poor. From the press box to Pete Golding to the field, we couldn't get plays in. They were confusing, didn't make any sense. That's why players in the secondary were lined up incorrectly. Linebackers were lined up incorrectly. Blitzes weren't interpreted great. And so we blamed it all on Dylan Moses being hurt last year. The fact that we didn't have our captain on the field to call that. Well, it turns out here we are again. Alabama defensively, they're 62nd in passing success rate on defense. They're 48th in defending the explosive pass. In passing EPA, 37th in defensive rushing success rate. Things have not improved. Listen, I know Ole Miss was on the schedule, but these were there when they played Missouri in week 1. These were a problem. So I think Pete Golding is the one that really is going to struggle here. And without Saban there to help him tweak the defense and give him an assist and tell him where to line up certain players, and the biggest thing, make halftime adjustments, make quarterly adjustments, drive to drive, play to play. That's why Saban came in and took Tosh Lapoy's duties completely away. No more defensive play calling for you. You're done. It's mine. Now, Saban has wanted Pete Golding to succeed. He loves Pete Golding, but it's just not happening. There was a rant from Paul Feinbaum about getting him fired earlier this summer. The numbers speak for themselves. In 236 defensive plays, let's think about this stat. In 236 defensive plays, Alabama has 9 passes defensed. 9. That's it. They're not knocking down anything. So if we're going to talk about the point spread and the movement, how does Saban not being there affect the coordinators? It affects the offense 0. I think it affects the defense big time. So for those reasons, we can talk about side all you want, Stuck, but I mean, I'm going to jump to the Georgia side. Do you want to comment on that before I jump to the Georgia side?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought about. I thought the defense coming in to this year, and it was a problem last year. I mean, just look back to that LSU game. But I thought the defense, those problems, look, Alabama's always reloading. They have coordinator consistency. They were injuries all over. But, so I thought that this year we were going to see a drastic jump in that defense. And then, I didn't get to watch much of that Alabama Ole Miss game. I told you, I was out at the bar, just watching it from the side. So I went back and watched it. And yes, the Ole Miss offense is electric. But every single third down, Ole Miss would third and long every time. Guys wide open, missed assignments over the middle of the field. I mean, linebackers out of place. Dylan Moses not out of place. And we know it's a really young secondary. And the defensive line isn't playing up to snuff. So just from the eye test alone, it's not just, hey, it was one Ole Miss game and they were electric, blah, blah, blah. And I think that you're right with Saban not being there to make adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Because I don't think that anyone can really slow down this Alabama offense. If anyone's going to do it, it's Georgia. But I can't – it's hard for me now after watching that game. It's hard for me to envision both of these teams not getting to 28, which is ultimately why I like over 56. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. There's real fundamental problems on this Alabama defense. Now, their offense, just with a little improvement on the defensive side of the ball, their offense might be able to carry them to a national championship. But on the flip side, this defense might end up costing them a national championship against elite competition.
Right. So let me back you up on the over here, because I did take a first half over. And the reason I went first half instead of the full game, which I may still come out and hit the full game, is because the secondary.
Wouldn't you like the full game more, though, because you don't have Saban adjusting?
Well, Jordan Battle's out for the first half, and
targeting.
For targeting in the second half against Ole Miss, he's going to sit out the first half. I don't expect Pete Golding to make any defensive changes in the first half, and with Jordan Battle out, who's third in the team in tackles, I just think Georgia's going to have their way. Now, there's other things that I'm hearing, like I Kirby mentioned the word sloppy 20 times in his Monday presser. And there was a lot in there. To quote him, Kirby's being coy about tempo here. He's saying, I'll be honest with you, football gets sloppy when you go fast. It doesn't mean it's not successful, but when you're sloppy, fundamentals go down and stats go up. He's about the whole group text with Lane. He says, being fast is just Lane's style, and the key to beating Bama is sustainable drives, no 3 and outs. So let's talk about that. Can Georgia have sustainable drives against Alabama's defense? And I think the answer is obviously yes. 2+ first downs against Tennessee, 46% of the drives. 2+ first downs drives against Auburn, 77%. 77% of the drives against Auburn had 2+ first downs. Arkansas, let's throw the first half out, right? That was Mathis. That was the first game of the season. If you look at the second half when they had the outburst, 4 of their 5 drives had 2+ first downs and another drive that ended with a field goal. I think, you need to look at Kirby being coy about going tempo. He says it's sloppy and you lose your fundamentals. He wants to go tempo so that he can have Alabama on their heels, lined up incorrectly and making mistakes. So that's another reason that I like the over here. One final note on the over is that I really like Eric Stokes and Richard LeCounte on defense for Georgia. I mean, LeCounte To me, he's the key to the game. So as far as passes defensed against the Alabama skill positions, he's drawing comparisons to Roquan Smith, especially in sniffing out the run. He could close from the safety position to getting a running back on the line of scrimmage and quicker than I could see any other defender in the nation. And one other thing for the over, available yards is a stat that calculates the percentage of how many yards you got on your drive. So if you start your drive at the 20-yard line, there's 80 available yards. This is why I don't think Alabama can be stopped. I think the Georgia defense is great, but this is why I don't think the Alabama defense can be stopped. Teams are generally around 40% of available yards. Bama's gone 60%, 60%, and last week against Ole Miss, they achieved 91% of their available yards, which may be an all-time record. I'm not sure. I think the over in the first half is good. I'm not sure what kind of changes are going to happen before the second half, but I just think it's an over game in general. And if Kirby decides that he wants to go tempo, which Stetson Bennett can do, then this game definitely will go over. Do I like Georgia to win the game? I power rate at 3.5. I don't have much of an edge here. I think the bouncing between the dead numbers and the 4.5s and the 5.5s is not that big of a difference to me. Am I going to get involved live? I probably would on Georgia if I ever saw that 7. That's really where the sharps were coming in and starting to hammer the number this week. It never got to a 7, got to 6.5, and it took in plenty of action. If I see a Georgia 7, you could probably expect me to fire. But in an over game where everybody's going tempo, I'm going to take the best offense, and that best offense is Alabama. So I think the target window for live on the side is an Alabama pick to a Georgia +7. But count me all in on the over because I don't believe in Pete Golding by himself without Nick Saban unless they're hanging him in a shark tank cage above the field. I don't think he'll make adjustments. They're missing Jordan Battle in the first half. Lots of things here pointing to Alabama having a bad defensive day.